Could you call the roll for us, please?
Councilmember Boger. Councilmember Plinsky.
Here.
Councilmember Lindsay.
Here.
Councilmember Greenlee.
Oh, here. I couldn't hear you.
Councilmember Freeman.
Here.
Councilmember McDaniel.
Here.
Councilmember Shoemaker.
Here?
So hopefully we'll be joined by Councilmembers Boger and Lindsay. First item on the agenda is public comments. Anyone from the public that would like to address council? John, this is your chance for 3 minutes.
You know, lately I lost it.
Got to eat up sometime till Brent gets here. No?
Nothing to say right now, Mr. Mayor.
Okay.
Thanks.
Anyone else from the public? Okay, going to our first presentation this evening from Lisa Nisenfeld from the Columbia River Economic Development Council. Welcome, Lisa.
Thank you. Nice to see you all again. And as you recall, our program calls for us to come out and speak with each of our investor public partners at least twice a year, 3 if you're really unfortunate. So I'm here to talk about things we're going to be working on in 2013, as well as then to give you some of the results we had from 2012. Along the way, please feel free to ask questions. And, you know, part of the reason for my coming isn't just to talk at you, but to hear back from you if we are catching elements that you think we need to be aware of, or if there are things that you want to put on our radar screen. So, having said that, I'll get the iPad down shortly here. Business growth, that is the growth of our existing businesses, remains the top priority of the CREDC. Helping those businesses grow is a large piece of work. If you've met Bonnie Moore, you'll know that we approach that in very enthusiastic fashion. So we've been working with a lot of companies, helping them to grow through increasing their exports, increasing the markets they export to, or just getting into export in general, in helping them do lean training, find those resources to do that training, which has been a major turnaround for a number of companies in the area. And then helping companies deal with site selection, permitting, things like that. We work closely with SWEDA on that. And then connecting companies through workforce resources through the Southwest Washington Workforce Development Council. We're very closely connected with them. We share office space, and we help bring them companies to make that workforce work meaningful. And then finally promoting entrepreneurship through Pub Talk and related entrepreneurship efforts. We have a new business recruitment plan, and this year we're really, our outbound recruitment, which means the work we do proactively towards business recruitment as opposed to answering the phone, is really to go after target industries, particularly in software and information technology, as well as technology products. We think that our sweet spot is looking for companies that are mid-sized, not enormous companies that are looking for incentives, like we saw recently with the state of Oregon, where we play that incentives game. The state of Washington, we don't engage in that. So we think that mid-sized companies where the decision maker is part of the move is really key. That those decision makers come to our communities, see the quality of life, see the types of communities they want to live in, and they make that decision for us. The recent Integra announcement last week, I think, is a good demonstration of that. The decision makers are part of that move. They know they want to live in Washington, notwithstanding a fairly sizable offer of an incentive from Oregon. So that worked well for us.
What would you consider mid-sized?
Oh, 500 or less. For us, 500 is a pretty big company.
I was going to say, yeah.
But a company that's coming to us and wants to talk about, 8,000 to 10,000 employees, that would be very difficult for us to cite, but it's also, we don't play the bidding game. And, we just don't want to spend our time that way. So.
I'll get to it.
Okay. Um,
How did you happen to settle on technology companies?
Well, we think we have a pretty good critical mass of those companies in our region, particularly in the Kamas-Washougal area, that they are growing. We have a number of opportunities to grow, particularly in that semiconductor cluster of companies looking at significant expansions. But then the software and IT part of it is really the growing edge of the economy. So while we're not giving up on manufacturing, manufacturing continues to be the backbone of our economy. We know that manufacturing will continue to hire fewer and fewer people, just due to technology, mechanization. We have been replaced by robots. And so as we see fewer people going to work in those manufacturing companies, we need to supplement with something else to have a place for people to go to work.
You know, I've been hearing that same song for 50 years now.
Have you?
Manufacturing is 30% of the economy today, as it was 50 years ago.
Well, actually, in our economy, in terms of employment, it's 9%, where it was 24% 10 years ago. So, but in terms of dollars, yes, the dollars still remain about 30%. Vitally important to our region. Almost all manufacturing these days, however, is also powered by high technology. So it's you
Well, I
kind of have to look at both ends.
I like the idea of getting the critical mass there so that they can interact.
Mm-hmm.
That's
Well,
a great idea.
And our target industries also include agricultural processing, which was our clever way of including pulp and paper with food processing. I'm going to be forgetting a few other things. Health information management has been one of the targets that our consultants on the strategic plan set forth. They have done some additional research for us this year and have discovered that it kind of looks like there's been a consolidation in that industry, and they're down to 2 major providers in the country, and it's not going to proliferate in the way they thought it was. So that we should probably not spend a lot of time and effort on healthcare information technology, although there will be other opportunities connected to healthcare. So,
Thank you.
So companies that fit existing real estate opportunities, you know, who will fit in Steigerwald? We'll start with that. You know, who will fit in various opportunities we have that are ready to go throughout the region. And let's market proactively with our partners to make those things happen. We're so impressed by the ports bringing that property online quickly. A lot of people around the region, including the other side of the river, said it wasn't possible. And so it's been pretty thrilling to say it is. And then finally, we're cooperating with Greater Portland, Inc. for greater reach. They do business recruitment for the entire metropolitan area. When a company that's doing a major search decides to look around the country, they're going to pick a metropolitan area where they're interested in. They're not going to pick Washougal or Vancouver or Ridgefield. They're going to say, well, I'm interested in the Portland metropolitan area. And that's where Greater Portland is able to reach those companies for us on our behalf. And then when those companies come to then say, where do we look within that region, we're really fortunate to have a different tax system, different culture, different kinds of governance systems that companies have a real choice. So Greater Portland, Inc. itself is neutral in that regard, but
Would you explain a little bit about what Greater Portland, Inc. is, what its history was, where it came from, where it is now?
Well, its history, it depends on where you want to start, but I'll start with Greenlight Greater Portland. Greenlight Greater Portland was started about, I want to say, 8 years ago as a way for the private sector in Portland to band together and do regional proactive business recruitment. That role had formerly been filled by the Portland Development Commission for the entire region, but due to internal Portland politics, that had shifted, and that Portland PDC was really working within the city. They didn't have much success their first 6 or 7 years, and so they essentially started over, did a reset, hired a new executive and a new charter, and that's how it's going along right now. And so far, so good.
Is it your sense that this reorganization, and my understanding is also there's a reorganization in terms of who the members of the board are? That, for example, I think there's a larger public participation than there was in Greenlight.
Yes, Greenlight was almost suspicious of public participation. They're structured now much more similarly to CREDC, which is both the public and the private working together. You know, this is our first year of membership. I'm participating on that board. We'll see. The other thing we hope that does for us is to help us extend visibility of Clark County companies throughout the metro area. There are many business opportunities that our companies can take advantage of that we think that we're missing through not doing some of that networking. So, but we will be very critical about that in the coming year. So software and IT industries, we know we need to build this part of the knowledge economy. The idea is to create a beachhead for those technologies, particularly in downtown Vancouver and the Fort, which is, if you think about it, the most visible thing you hit when you come into I-5. There's a great reluctance for some in the technical community in Portland to acknowledge our existence at all. So creating that visible beachhead we think will be important. We also then know that we have nodes of those companies in this part of the county, in Ridgefield, Battleground, that will be connecting all of them. And so trying to grow them by, we'll be doing a showcase for those companies. It's a little more than a networking opportunity. It will be having some of those companies do a show and tell about what they do and form some collaborations. We were excited last week to announce that, and this kind of got lost in the newspapers because of the Integra deal, a company called I'm sorry, my brain is blank right now. It's Immersive Technologies, I think, has relocated to Vancouver. They're the company that did Google Street View. Have you ever done that? You know how you can take your finger and wherever you push it, it's where you're looking. That's their technology. They've been working with a broad variety of Fortune 500 companies on advertising strategies. And so they have just relocated, and they're small but an important firm in that constellation. Growing the talent base is another thing we need to do in order to get companies to be here and to stay here. We have lost a few software firms to Portland in the last couple of years. We do not want to see that become a trend. We are developing a toolkit for companies that they can use in recruiting talent, whether it's from Silicon Valley or across the river or in Singapore, but about what it's like to work in Clark County, what the assets are. The City of Vancouver and the State of Washington have developed a video that begins one effort there, and that's available on our website if you're interested to see that. Finally, we're working with Clark College and WSUV on growing some of their programs that have been particularly attractive to companies. So the Creative Media and Digital Culture program at WSUV graduated 37 students last year, all of whom were employed before the school year was out in their field. So we know there's a demand there. We'd like to be able to feed our local companies with those graduates. More regional collaboration, as I had mentioned earlier, is something we're looking forward to. We also think that we can command greater respect in the region than perhaps we do at the moment, or have in the past. Our Lands for Jobs agenda is a very important piece of what we do. No matter how much economic development we do, if we don't have the land and buildings to put companies, we might as well go home. So we have raw land, but we don't have it in a condition that is we can get to permits quickly. So shortly you'll be seeing us announce a market-ready strategy to help local areas begin to get within 6 months of that permit, which now takes about 18 months. And we'll be working with the governor and the new head of the Department of Ecology to try and fix some of those permitting processes. We ran 4 bills in this last legislature, didn't get any of them through, but we did get their attention. So we know that's a huge issue, particularly around stormwater. So that's where we're headed there. Last year, and I'm going to go through this very quickly because it's so last year. Last year we developed a focused work plan for the strategic plan, detailing 5 areas that we would work in, as you see in front of you, and really got all the wheels moving in those areas. So in business growth, we visited 100 companies during the year. Of those 100 companies, we came out of those meetings with 40 projects, covered over 6,600 employees. Those projects were things like energy efficiency for the food processing industry, where a collection of several food processing companies got together, and we got a BPA and the PUD to provide them with an engineer to help them save money in their processes. That will continue into this year. And this year we'll also be looking at other types of companies to work together. The export assistance we provide has been a major asset this year. Market research, site and pre-permitting assistance has been a moderately sized piece of work, and then hiring assistance and training. We created, or the companies created, 272 new jobs. This is again through business growth of existing businesses, and over $36 million in new investment. So that's considerably below our goal, which is 500 jobs per year out of business growth. But in coming out of the recession, we're pleased that we were able to get that many last year. We think that that's kind of the tip of the iceberg. We'll be seeing many more this year. This is the food processing list of those companies this year. So far they've saved 7 million gallons of water and 1,000,002 kilowatt hours of electricity and $200,000. The important thing about the energy projects isn't just that those companies save money, but that we also save that bandwidth for future companies, so that we're not being kicked into a higher category for our electrical prices, and that we have the capacity in terms of water to serve future employers. We also were able to procure 2 federal grants, and I put the Brookings Institution project here. It's not really a grant. They provide us and the rest of the Portland metropolitan area with some technical assistance on exports. And so we've learned a lot from that project this year, and passing that along to our local businesses. There is a thing called JIAC, the Jobs Innovation Accelerator Challenge. It's federal grants. There have been 2 rounds of those grants, and the Portland metropolitan area is the only region to have won 2 of them, so 1 in each round. So this the second round, CREDC is the grant recipient, and we're working with the rest of the metropolitan area. What that grant does is allows us to hire a series of experts on things like entrepreneurship and energy efficiency and those things that we work with businesses on. Lets us bring experts to those businesses. It will also help us with some engineering internships and similar projects with both high schools and the university. I mentioned the digital technology zone earlier, so I'm not going to go through that again. Business recruitment program, as I mentioned, we retooled it last year. Last year we handled 35 projects, including 2 outbound projects, recruitment trips. We don't do as many trade shows any longer. We used to do a lot of those. Now we'll do it occasionally as part of a larger effort. So the state of Washington had a booth at a Seattle area aerospace show, and we participated as part of that. And our recruiter essentially walked the floor looking for people who didn't have yet a Northwest presence, and those were principally European companies. We have one of those still looking. He also went to the Bay Area to talk to software companies who are on the verge of growth. We're also looking at companies who have had major research projects that are now ready to move into the production mode. So we'll be following up with each of them. In our foreign direct investment program, which is fancy economic development speak for trying to recruit companies from overseas, we're really doing that based on relationships. So, for example, the Port of Vancouver has a very strong relationship with companies in South Korea through Far West Steel, who recently located there. Far West Steel has sister companies who are potentially interested in coming to this region. They indeed have other friends and suppliers that may be also willing. So we're going to try and kind of daisy chain those connections. And then finally, working with Greater Portland, Inc. for outbound recruitment. In entrepreneurship last year, we had 5 Pub Talk events. We had over 120 people at each event. I don't know if any of you have attended those, but we had one last week. They continue to be not only fun, but informative. Last year, we had 3 companies become partially capitalized, bringing our total now to 11. So those are companies in the region that are starting up, and they're past that proof of concept. They have a product that we know works. Typically, they've been through their family money or that first iteration. They're looking for other investors. We're able to help connect them with those investors pretty well. And in the summer, we co-sponsor an angel investor event that is very popular. In fact, on June, I want to say 16th is the next Pub Talk. And we'll be having any of you have watched Shark Tank on television? We'll be having 4 companies present their pitch to investors. We'll have investor judges, and the winner will get to have a booth at this angel investor event, and we'll get a small cash prize. So that'll be pretty exciting, I think. Typically, when we've done events like that, we have had more than just the winner get capitalized. So different investors are interested in different things, and that's how that works. So we're also exploring this year, began last year, accelerator services within the region. Business accelerators, the latest cool thing that economic development programs do. We don't want to just play Me Too, let's go do one of those, because we may or may not need one. So we're looking at where are the gaps? What don't we have that our small businesses need to start up? And is that reasonably available within the metropolitan area? Is it something that would serve our businesses better if it were available locally, and to what extent? And then we'll begin making decisions on what to do with that next. In the area of education last year, we worked jointly with the Workforce Council on marketing our workforce services to local companies. We partnered with WSUV and Clark College. They developed a flyer for businesses that when we do those 100 business visits, everybody gets one that talks about the potential for joint research, the potentials for using interns, things like that, of what those companies can do very specifically with the education institutions. And we have worked closely with businesses and educators in the Workforce Council to improve the pipeline for workers in the STEM areas particularly. In lands,
Did you say STEM?
STEM, science, technology, engineering, and math.
I love those little initiatives.
Yeah, can't get
So
away.
often I know it. How do I know that? Thank you.
And really, it's I think the region is beginning to really gel, and it's worked together on those things. So that's an exciting development. On the Lands for Jobs, we had a pre-permitting policy committee last year. They published a white paper on the permitting issues, so we are on the record as saying this is broken. We met with nearly all of the legislative and gubernatorial candidates to get their feedback and to try and get a commitment from them about those issues. We developed some strategies for, okay, what are you going to do now as we go into a new administration?
What do you mean by issues?
Stormwater, for example, the state, the one-size-fits-all requirements to return the land to pre-European conditions, for example, or the new requirements that will be laid on all of us for, I forget their initials, starts with an L. Yes, LID. Low impact development. Again, one size fits all, and so what works in the Puget Sound doesn't necessarily work.
Doesn't really work there either.
Well, but they do have a larger body of water to discharge into. They don't have the same soils issues as we do for the most part, and frankly, they don't have the same unemployment issues as we do. So we think there's much to be gained by getting the legislature and the governor to know that things are different here and require different solutions. My favorite one is the pervious pavement. You know, where you require it on development and then the water comes through the pervious pavement and sits on top of the impervious clay soil and ruins the pervious pavement.
Right.
You know, not sensible. Further, the Puget Sound is exempted from many of those rules. So we have issues. Yeah, so we've tried to demonstrate that these are not partisan issues. They are not whining. These are very practical items. So we have a commitment that the head of the Department of Ecology will be down here after the legislature is over. We will work her over in combination with the new head of the Department of Commerce and see where we can take things.
Good luck.
Thank you. We will need it. We also have been working last year on pre-permitting. We have a sort of a format for that, looking at what different places have been doing there. And we are now working at breaking down, looking at different pieces of land that could be brought to market more quickly. So you'll be hearing more about that in the coming weeks. In the area of communications, we met with all of our public investment bodies 2 or 3 times last year. We convened those public investor staff leaders, Dave was one of them, to coordinate work and communicate priorities between the different jurisdictions. So quarterly we get together in a formal way and talk about what's going on, because that communication doesn't necessarily occur otherwise. We also last year established an energy work group that members of our board who wanted to work with the PUD to make sure we maintain our low industry energy rates. That is one of the calling cards that brought business to this region, between transportation, water, and energy. Critical that we keep those in line. We doubled the number of board meetings, and we list that as an accomplishment. I'm not sure that our board members would agree, but that's what the board wanted. And
how often do you meet?
Monthly, as a full board. We also developed there's a committee for everything now, so that with a 40-some-odd member board, it's difficult for people to really feel engaged. And so we have now a series of subcommittees where people do much more direct and frank discussions.
Meetings open to the public?
No, they're not. That's where the frank part comes in.
Okay.
And we have developed a much more deliberate approach to policy making. So that is that it'll go through a series of considerations before the CREDC takes a position on anything in the future. And I think that's it. Oh, well, I guess there's more. This is an old number. No, I changed the number, never mind. So we raised $4.33 million from both public and private sources towards our goal of $5.5 million, so we're getting there. We increased private investor revenue by 25% last year. We enlisted 26 new private investors and 2 new public investors, including the city of La Center has just joined, and the city of Battleground rejoined. We've tried to improve our quarterly luncheons by conceptualizing those as events with game changers, people that our community wants to hear from because something significant is shifting. And we've implemented this investor relations plan to maintain contact with our communities. And that's the end.
Thank you. Lisa, what, from the city standpoint, what can we be doing that assists yourselves in hitting the goals that you've got?
You know, I think our cities have done tremendous work on looking at their own permitting processes to make them as efficient as possible. We're going to ask cities to redouble those efforts. One of the things we'll be asking the Department of Ecology to look at is working with us. As I understand it now, a lot of permits go from the city to the state, back to the city, and back to the state. Does this seem like your world? Yes? So we are asking ecology to look at areas where we could run those things in tandem, rather simultaneously, rather than having this ping pong process that takes, you know, a lot of time. It lends unpredictability. So that's going to take effort from city staff to sit down with ecology to try and make a system that works county-wide, if possible. So I think that's probably the most important area. But your attending to infrastructure continues to be really important, you know, making sure that where we have parcels of land available, we also have roads and water for those parcels. That's really important work as well. And finally, education. We don't ever have a company come talking about planting themselves here that doesn't ask about our school systems. So your support of those are really important.
Dave, Mitch, Jim, anything that you guys have that you want to chime in with, things that we've done in the last year or so to help that same, and Lisa, you certainly, in mentioning the Steigerwald property and how quickly that came online, you know, most all of that went through Mitch's side of the world, and that's one of the things that we try to make sure is the norm and not,
Right,
this is
the exception.
exactly. So, Mitch, anything from your side?
No, I mean, I attend the quarterly meetings with CREDC and try to stay on top of those. Be responsive to anything that we need in order to help our part of the world out here.
We also, if a big project comes down the pike, we will sit down with staff ahead of time and say, let's get prepared for this big one coming. So, and I know that Paul Dennis pays a lot of attention to that as well.
I would only mention that I think our Kamas-Washougal Economic Development Association and the CREDC, that relationship's still just a couple years old, I think has really begun to mesh, and the sort of the different roles that would be played depending upon what the situation is really taking shape, because the professionals, Lisa, all that work together well.
Right.
And that, you know, we're not redundant and we're not overlapping, but we're complementary and working together. I think the legislative advocacy that the CREDC can do for us is on our behalf is very helpful, because it's a bigger and louder voice than just Washougal coming up or our CREDC coming up, and our legislative delegation was very helpful with that as well, to the extent that it worked. It was difficult this session, or it is difficult this session. It's not over yet, but working through a couple of those environmental committees specifically. Right. So I was up there in support of a couple bills that Representative Pike had sponsored, working closely with the CREDC and others to try to point out all of the things that Lisa pointed out very well earlier. And Lisa was there, and other folks representing the CREDC, so we really appreciate that kind of leadership and support as a real area where we can be helped.
Thank you. We've also been in touch with our delegation this week about making sure that our tax incentives for the semiconductor industry remain in place, as well as the out-of-state sales tax exemption, which so many of our retail businesses rely on. So working closely with the Chamber of Commerce on that one.
Well, certainly make sure as the next couple months come up, as you've got meetings with key folks. I know we're putting together lists for, I guess you'd call them specific instances where things aren't working as well as they can be in the jurisdictional world that we're all in. So as we have some of those same meetings, we'll make sure that we get those along to you as well, so that you've got those,
Excellent.
you know, just specific case and points that you can look to and say.
We can all always do better,
Yep.
so.
Questions, comments from council? Paul?
On a lot of the kind of, don't know what to call them, groups that I'm in on LinkedIn, one of the big discussions is about, do we have adequate internet, high-speed internet backbone? Do we have adequate fiber here? Everybody in the world is saying, we need 100 gigabits, which of course is never land. But is your sense that we're in any way limited by?
It's a really good question. As you probably know, the companies that own those pipelines are not really forthcoming with a lot of information about their capacity. Those are trade secrets. City may know more about them, or each city may know more about them than we're able to find out. But we haven't had a company yet come and say, I want to be in this site or this area, and that infrastructure is underserved. That hasn't happened yet. We've asked, in fact, I just came here today from a meeting with someone at Comcast, and we've also spoken with our friends at CenturyLink, who are investors in CREDC, about those things. They seem to believe we are either adequately served or that the plans are in place. But if you're finding specifics of where we need more bandwidth, or if there's not fiber to an area, please let us know, because we would make that known. So.
And then the other thing is, there was a lot of talk about WSUC and Clark and Southwest Workforce Development. How about the Skills Center? Are they a player in this at all? Do they contribute to what we need?
Absolutely, as are the rest of our K-12 schools. But yes, the Skills Center, I'm going back to my days as director of the Workforce Council. The Skills Center is one of the most highly respected providers of specific job skills training in the region. And they've been very responsive when we have needed a shift in the types of things companies are asking for. And they also provide routinely internships and things like that, which are incredibly important in moving people forward in their careers. So yes, they are a very highly valued player there.
And then in terms of real estate availability or site availability, with Steigerwald coming online, we've got a lot of 3 and 5 and those kind of size sites becoming available. And for a number of reasons, we're not really a player for the next Ford plant. Not the least of which is that the state of Tennessee could write them a check for $100 million.
Exactly right.
And we can't. But what else is, other than those supersized sites, what else is missing from the inventory?
Buildings,
Buildings. What kind of buildings?
60 to 100,000 square foot manufacturing space or flex space.
16-foot ceilings, 20s?
It depends on who you're talking with, but typically fairly high ceilings, 3 loading docks, and we can kind of go down the list that we get inquiries for regularly.
And then how about rail freight capacity?
We haven't seen a lot of requests about that would go beyond existing capacity. That may shift as we bring in more unit trains and things like that. I just can't really predict how that's going to work out. Something to keep our eyes on.
Thank you.
Other questions?
Just a broad question. Is Washougal doing things right, in your opinion? I mean, are you familiar familiar with what you've been doing in economic development?
Oh, I think so. I mean, the physical changes you see in Washougal over the last several years are terrific. The Steigerwald investment is the right place at the right time. Teaming up with Camas and the port on Sweda, you can advocate for your part of the region and get things done much more quickly than other parts of the region. So it's, yeah, absolutely.
Is there anything you can point to that we might do a little better?
Oh, I don't know, I've been wondering about Dave's haircut, but no. You know, I don't think that there's anything right now that I would say specifically needs to change. I think that as we get further down the road on these permitting issues, that we'll jointly come up with some things to bring to you and say it would help if this changed. So.
We've abolished our zone districts.
Stop the rain. Right?
Yeah.
That's
Hey.
another issue.
Stop the grinding on Chamber of Commerce days. Lisa, thank you very much. Thank you for being here.
And thanks to all of you for your investment in CREDC. It means a lot to us. We really appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay, moving to upcoming agenda items. Jim, you've got a street vacation for us, or streets vacations.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Good evening, everyone. No, I don't have one. Just I can bring up a map if we need it.
I can hold this one up.
Yeah, there we go. Well, there's one on here as well, so.
Yeah, we do have one in our
Yeah, it's in your packet. I don't know if I need to.
It's
pull it
called
up here.
ROW vacations.
Right. Yeah. So the Port of Camas-Washougal has submitted a petition to the city for vacation of a number of streets near Wesley Ford and the boat parking area down in the marina down there in the Port of Camas-Washougal. So if you recall, this issue was brought to council's attention on March 11th, 2013. And at that time, council requested a legal determination whether or not the city is able to surplus the property without asking for compensation. And just to summarize the city attorney's legal opinion, the city is not required to receive compensation for the parcels. By state law, the city may charge up to 1/2 fair market value for the parcels. So tonight, we're asking council to adopt a resolution to set public hearing for vacation of the right-of-way properties in the port's business area. And with that short introduction, I'd like to open it up for any questions you have as far as possibly property value or things like that you'd like to talk about. So, any questions?
Just a point of curiosity, do you have any idea when these streets were dedicated?
There's a number of different dates that we came across, so quite a while ago.
What's the earliest?
I get not off the top of my head. I don't have it off the top of my head, but
Pre-World War II?
let me see. I can look and see if I can find some dates on here. Let me see. Yeah, I'd have to look at it closer. Hate to give you a wrong date at this point. It's not something I drafted, but a long time ago, let's put it that way. I can send that to you if you like. I just don't have the information
I
in
was
front of
just
me.
curious, not a big deal.
Jim, how familiar are you with the map?
Fairly familiar, yeah.
This area down here that borders between the green area
Right.
and where the Black Pearl would be, is the portion of the street easement on the planted area that the port has and does not encumber what is now the service roadway going down there?
Does not encumber it. Yeah, That portion right there, I believe, is, yeah, I don't think it's encumbered. Yeah. There is a planted area there. It runs right underneath of it, Sean, so.
Right.
Your Honor. I guess I'm not sure what the question is.
The main thing I want to get to, I know when we were having the discussions with the Black Pearl and
Right.
Port in regards to properties and parking and switching properties, all of that. I know at one point the Port was wanting to try and get a hold of that property that is now basically the driveway that comes down to intersect those, the access to the docks and also the back of their buildings. But it seems to me that that got flagged, that that's actually part of the property that belongs to the Black Pearl. So my question is, before we go forward with these portions, do we have, in our process, do we have letters going out to both the
We do,
hotel
to the
and Black
property
Pearl?
owners, yeah, we
Okay.
have letters, to all the property owners abutting these streets. That's a requirement of the process, so that is required.
Okay.
And then we'll have signs that we put out and, for public comment and those type of things.
Hi, Joe.
Is this something that's happened in the past on other properties where there were streets that they built large buildings on top of?
It's kind of rare to see a building
Rare.
on top of one like that.
Even the small ones on the outside? I'm just curious as far as precedent.
Yeah, that's
What we
that's
look
kind
at.
of rare. So I don't know when that building was constructed, but there was a lot of things that went on in the past.
Usually
That,
title insurance policy pick that up, I would think.
right.
What,
So that's kind of a rare occurrence for sure.
The port may actually own that ground.
Yeah. Maybe it's probably not a fee right away. It's not, as far as you can tell, it's not a fee right away. It's an easement.
Right.
But what I-
Right-of-way
What I
easement.
meant is that Wesley may be on a ground lease.
Oh.
Which I believe
Yeah.
they are. I think the
Right.
only two
Port.
privately owned portions in there are the restaurant and the hotel.
Still do a title policy right there, ground lease.
Joyce?
well, what does this mean to Washougal? Anything?
Well, Washougal's right of way right now, so we don't maintain the right of way down there. I think it would clean up the books a little bit. It's nice when you have, if you have property, or if you have right of way, you want to make sure that that's something that you're going to utilize, or there's some purpose for it. Otherwise, we need to just kind of get it off the books.
The
How
other,
did it,
But it's been there for years. I mean, it's not a critical thing. I think the port approached us about it, and we are going through the proper process to get the right-of-way vacated.
he just answered my question. The port approached us.
Right.
And they're asking us to just write it off? Are they asking us to consider a price? What is their actual question?
They're asking us to vacate, and that's up to this body to determine
So they didn't
fair
specify.
compensation. No, they didn't specify. They would like, obviously, not to compensate the city for the properties. And there's no, we do not have to ask for compensation. Typically in these type of situations, if there's some benefit that the city derives, then we would typically ask for some sort of compensation or some benefit to them. But we actually derive benefit to turn these properties over, so.
I would think it's something we ought to not charge.
That's administratively from staff, that's where we've come back from, and it's our hope that the council sees fit not to charge anything for them, and we'd rather see.
We haven't had to maintain them, we haven't had to put any money out, like you say, it's a benefit to the city.
Very little, I think a couple of them down there, we do a little bit of signage here and there, and there's a couple of city stop signs and, street signs down there. Other than that, there's really not
The
much
roads,
of anything.
we don't do the roads or anything like that.
Quite frankly, I'd rather the port use those monies to build new buildings and open the other part of Steigerwald and do some things down here with their master plan that makes us work better and is better maintained than what we're asked to
I'd
do
be
at
in
this
favor
point.
of that.
When we've done vacations in the past, have we typically asked for the statutory authorization for half of, I know another jurisdiction in the county typically does that. You really have to have a pretty good justification for not asking for the 50% fair market value compensation of the land. And when we've done these in the past, what's Washougal done? They ask for the 50% usually?
We have in the past, you know, with alleys and things like that, if we're gonna vacate an alley that's, you know, right away and, you know, somebody increases their, you know, their backyard or whatever it may be, we do ask for compensation
On private properties.
on private properties. This
I
is,
know
why I
I
said-
know one case where the city of Vancouver's been asked to do that. In another matter, but,
Well, that's why I
See how
asked
that
about
turns
what's
out.
the precedent, what's happened in the past
right.
when it comes to
Well-
this type of situation. Has it even happened?
right, and this is a little bit different type of situation. Like the mayor said, it's on public property. We don't derive any benefit there at all. We don't have any use for it. The port went through and we actually got a utility easement in place in one of the areas, so we have an easement in place, so that was one of the concerns, but.
Joyce?
If we ask for compensation, how much would it be? What would it be?
Well, we went through and we have some comparables here. We came out with a little bit different values than the port did. And in the process, the port came up with a value and then we came up with a value as well. The number could range from $20,591.29. That's the port's valuation, to what we determined from our comps was $26,000, $26,023.88. So there's a $6,000, roughly $6,000.
But the compensation would be half of those numbers or those numbers?
That's right. Yeah, the compensation would be up to half of those numbers.
And to answer a previous question from Joyce, what do we get out of doing this? The port is probably our most important economic development partner at this point. And the elephant in the room, so to speak, is what happens to the Hamilton property and all of that development. And clearing this up for the port, I won't say it's a roadblock, but it certainly is a bother for them in terms of figuring out how they're going to implement all of these things. So clearing up this encumbrance for them allows our partner to move forward
I
to
just
our
wanted to
benefit.
know the number. That's all. I wanted the number.
I'd be supportive of this for all the reasons Councilmember Greenlee has stated. Plus, being someone who's dealt with municipal tort liability, while we probably aren't liable for maintenance of those streets down there, if someone was injured or something happened down there, there's a possibility we could get sued in a tort claim. And
It's a pretty busy
there's
little
some,
area too.
there's some exposure there, and if we take it off our books, we lose that exposure. So do it in a hurry.
Well, you're also not taking tax money from the port to turn around and pay us either.
Right.
It's already been paid for or required once before, so.
So I'd be supportive of no fee vacation.
One uniqueness about this, just procedurally, on your regular agenda tonight, you'll be asked to pass a resolution, and the resolution only sets the hearing. This is the type of scenario where you don't just set a resolution sort of by setting a resolution, which we typically do on, set a hearing by your action on consent. You actually have to resolve to have a hearing. So there's a lot of procedure involved with this. So tonight, you won't be granting the vacation. You will be setting the hearing, then you'll hear from the public at that date, at that hearing, and then after the hearing, then you could grant the vacation or vacate or whatever that action. And that date is in their action this evening. I forget which date the hearing is, but it's coming up soon.
Other questions, comments? Thank you, Jim.
Thank you.
Chief, you got some stuff for us on fireworks.
Yes, I do, sir.
Sun came out and here we go.
Good evening, Council, Mayor. Mayor approached me back in the fall of 12 about maybe perhaps limiting the days of use, or the days that sales are permitted in the city. The last code change we had was in '08, and we reduced the number of days of use from 8 days down to 1 day. So currently, from 1 day at July 4th and then December 31st, we do that as well. So currently we have sales for 8 days, and we're, by statute, we only have use of 1 day, and that's July 4th. So, and that's been going on for 4 years now, and during that time, if you can also attest to that, we've had fireworks going off in the city way before July 4th, you know, and we think by limiting the days of sales from these 8 days that we have on the books right now in July down to 3 days, July 2nd, 3rd, and 4th, we think that'll do something to relieve some of the use of fireworks that we currently are experiencing in the city. So what we have here, the first slide I got up here is these are what's permitted right now, and this is what we had on the books prior to 2008. Sales come on June 28th. They're between noon and 11 p.m. and then the next day they start at 9 a.m. and go to 11 p.m. And then on the 4th, sales are allowed from 9 a.m. to midnight. And then on the 5th, even the day after the 4th of July, sales are permitted again from 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. But the use is just limited from 9 a.m. To 11 p.m.
Just limited to 9.
Yeah, just limited to 9 p.m.
People don't think it's unreasonable and ask them to stop it.
Yeah, so, and then we're one of the 3 cities in the county that do allow sales of fireworks around the New Year's. Currently on the books, we have it from December 31st, December 27th through the 31st, and then sales start at 12 and go to 11, but we only allow for 1 day of use, and that's December 31st from 6 p.m. to 1 a.m.
Which is actually on January 1st.
Yeah, January 1st, yes. So then what I have also up here is what's everybody else doing in the county. Camas, just about a year ago, they reduced their sales and use from their July 1st through the 5th, with the use from July 1st through the 4th. Clark County, which and included in that is the cities of Ridgefield and Battleground. They're with the state. They go from June 28th through July 4th. They don't have one difference there. They don't do it on the 5th, and that's for sales and for use. But the cities of Ridgefield and Battleground do allow for December sales from the 27th through the 31st, and then they allow the use of fireworks on the 31st. Vancouver, they recently changed their use and sales from July 2nd through the 4th for the sales portion, and then the use will be July 4th only, but that will only take effect in 2014. Now mind you, all these changes, even if we were to adopt the changes in May at the City Council, then they won't be good for another year. So these our changes that we're currently proposing won't be good until 2014 as well. So we weren't in a real hush to get this thing done, but we had to get it. If we were going to make any change, we had to do it by July 1st of this year. So what we're proposing is to go from sales from July 28th to July 5th to July 2nd through the 4th, and then the use would stay the same. It would only be July 4th, and then we would reduce the number of days, and I guess they didn't show up. We would reduce the number of days at Christmas and New Year's when they set them off from the 27th. We would eliminate 2 of those days and go to the 29th. So that would be from the 29th of December through the 31st. And then with the use, yeah, for some reason it didn't get on that. So so we're proposing eliminating 2 of those days, and then, but the use would stay the same on December 31st. And that use goes from, again, goes from 6 p.m. to 1 a.m. on on January 1st. So the biggest change would be the number of days of sales. It would be going from 8 days down to 3 days. We would eliminate June 28th, 29th, and 30th, and then another one we would reduce is July 5th. Even though it's on the books right now, it's kind of, you know, they're allowed to sell on the 5th right now, but we like to see them being used up. We don't like to see them just being warehoused in somebody's garage. And so if we're allowing sales on the 5th and they can't use them, then that's what they're doing. They're going to be warehousing them until who knows when. So that's kind of the reason we eliminated the 5th on that. So. Yes, I did talk to all the vendors involved. I polled all the stands, and though they were disappointed in what we were proposing, they would still put out their tents for this, and when that, if that was to occur, and then they would do it in 14. We would make the change. So yes, and also we going through the Public Safety Committee have support of them as well. So.
So we're going to be consistent with Vancouver.
Yeah, by just by happenstance, we will be consistent with Vancouver in 2014.
Vancouver will be consistent with us.
Vancouver, the city of Vancouver will be consistent with us.
Well, they did it first.
Paul?
Just to remind people, I think Jennifer was the only one here last time we changed this. The reason that we added New Year's Eve is because from the fire department's point of view, when it comes down to it, you'd rather have fireworks on the 31st of December than you would on the 4th of July in terms of fire risk.
Yes, yeah, we have a lot more calls on the 4th of July than we do. This last December 31st, I don't recall a single incident with fireworks.
Then the other one is a bit more difficult. It strikes me that if we're letting people buy them and we're thinking somehow that they're not going to use them until the 4th, we're kidding ourselves a little bit. And I wonder, in fact, more than a little bit, and I wonder if it doesn't actually make sense to make the use periods conform with the sale periods.
Well, I think we're doing a little bit better because, I mean, they'll have, I'm not sure if the tent sales, if they would put them up for one day, you know?
I was going to go the other way,
Oh, okay.
actually.
Oh. Never mind. Well, I think you're interested in maybe going on the use, going to the 2nd, 3rd, and 4th, or?
Yeah, it just, you know, I know that this is a hot button issue on both sides. I mean, there's a patriotism argument and there's a peace and quiet argument that are both very strongly voiced. But I'm just concerned that if what we're doing is passing a law that we expect people to violate, should we really be doing that?
Yeah, we do have-
Expect them to abide by the law.
Chief, are the stands not required to also have information and handouts and that type of stuff in
Yeah,
regards to
for the
actual
past 4
legal
years,
dates
we've,
to use?
every consumer got a nice little
I guess
paper
shows
that had all the hours and stuff, and still with that, they were still setting the fireworks off. So.
Yeah, and of course, realistically, I mean, most of the displays in my neighborhood, all over the city, are fireworks that are not legal anywhere in the state of Washington. These aerial,
Well, those aren't coming from these sales.
right, right, but
Well, I would say, yeah, I mean, the problems that we have with fires are the bottle rockets,
and bigger rockets.
and we haven't so much had problems with the bigger rockets.
Oh, really?
I mean,
Okay.
most of that stuff dies out by the time it hits the ground. You know, it's more of a safety or health issue with those things going off, you know, on amputating a few fingers or something. But, you know, as far as fires, the biggest thing we have is bottle rockets, and those are outlawed here in the state of Washington. And that's probably the #1 cause of fires. There's more fires caused by some of the legal ones that we've find these ground bloom flowers that are state organ sales than we do at some of the bigger stuff that we
How about first aid calls?
have. Since I've been here, will this be seven 4th of Julys, we haven't experienced anything of significance as far as the first aids.
No blown up hands?
I mean, I'm not saying, I know there was one case where somebody did blow up a hand, but that was years ago.
And things like star shells and mortars are not that much of a problem?
No, that we haven't had the issue of setting fires from the mortars and stuff.
Great, thank you.
Joyce?
Well, it's my experience, most of these fireworks stands are charity.
Right.
Or there's Boy Scouts or the Lions or whatever. We're cutting their sales, but people can still go in the county and buy fireworks at on the 28th. So
Right.
I would think we would want to be consistent with the county, or, I mean, it's not that far to get to buy fireworks not in the city.
Right, and I'm hoping someday we have a county-wide system where everybody's operating off the same plate, but until this happens, I think this is a reasonable way to look at it. I mean, we either enforce the law or we don't, and having one day, we're limiting them to one day, but oh, by the way, they can only buy it for 3. I think we're going to see some of what's going on out there. I think we're going to see less of it, people setting things up.
On like the 2nd or 3rd, would I call police?
Yeah, that's what we've done in the past. And at first, we'll give them a warning, but if it becomes persistent, then we should.
I have to say, there's no one more patriotic in this room than me, and yet I wake up to an alarm at 5 a.m. And so when my neighbors are out 11, 12, 1 in the morning, those days in advance of the 4th, pretty exhausting after you do that day after day after day. The Public Safety Committee spent a whole meeting discussing this, and we, Dave and Brent and myself, brought this forward as a recommendation. I'm an old fogey, I just have to work, and so does my husband, and so does most of the community. It's about sleep for me. If I could stay up all night and nights in a row and play like that, I'd love to, but we have to respect the neighbors that have to get up and go to work.
So we're hoping this will address some of those needs and reduce the number of days that people are setting up for fireworks.
The dogs will be watching.
Dogs, yes, poor dogs.
I have a question about cameras, because we obviously have a border of cameras, and some of our neighborhoods even have share borders. So, are they discussing any changes with
They just they approved some changes last year, and so they'll be going into effect this July of this year. So they
This
just
is the
gone through it.
current.
Yeah, that's what is current and what they'll be doing in this quarter. It will be different.
We're not having any complaints that we've gotten?
I don't think so. I think they get this as many as we do. They reduced theirs from the 20, it used to be the 28, so they reduced it by, on sale, they reduced it by 2 days, or 3 days. 3 days on sale.
For charity, we participated in one through the Camas line that has been in Camas for 30-some years, and we actually were in favor of them cutting back the number of days.
You're gonna probably sell as
Other than, our experience has always been, other than the first day, the 2nd, 3rd, and 4th days, when you're out there selling for a week, 8 days, are a waste. You just get them closer to the 4th, and we had even suggested they get away from the 5th as well, because Truthfully, I think that's a holdback from years ago when we used to have to buy fireworks. Sold, and we had leftover, and we sold it again next year, and that was shown. Now everyone actually takes it back full credit. So years ago, fireworks stands were doing discounted 50% because they'd already bought them and they sold them like
And a lot of it, they start to damage depending on the bit. There's a lot of
Just a little experience from my hometown in Orange County, California. They eventually banned fireworks altogether in my city, but we were only about 2 blocks from another city that still had them. So we packed up the kids and went and sat in the local Albertsons grocery store and just had fun. So I think probably we were talking about consistency. I'm betting that the rest of the county is going to be narrowing as time goes by.
We'll still have our celebration at the church.
That's pretty nice.
Hopefully this just helps for some of those, not all of them, but for some of those not to be as illegal as they are now if they're out there selling for all the days in the
At the 28th of the council meeting, the 28th of what the exact hours. I don't have the hours on the sales there, but it'll be the same as what the state had for those days. So July 2nd, 4th, from 9 a.m. to 11. As well as December 29th to the 31st.
Okay.
Is that it?
Thank you, Chief. Mitch, we've got some information for us from Liberty Land. Gotta be quick here.
My dinner is going to be late.
Real quick, the item before you this evening is regarding a request for an easement from Liberty Land Development represented by Leanne Bremer. And this item has a lot of history. I will stick to the most recent history, which was a hearing in March of last year where the easement came before you and it was tabled until a time that would allow the HOA Riverview Terrace development to come back or to seek inclusion of the property in question within their HOA. The letter that came before you from Ms. Bremer alluded to that they were working on getting the number of votes and they hadn't gotten there yet. And then today I received an email from the HOA president, Mr. Steve Lambert, who said that they had the votes. Unfortunately, he couldn't be here this evening, but Dennis Bruner, who's also on the board, informed me right before this meeting that they may be one short. So they are counting those numbers as we speak. But the issue is still the same in that they believe that they're right there with having, they are in agreement, only have one residence on this property. They would be subject to the CCNRs and the Riverview Terrace, the same as the Riverview Terrace development. And they are requesting that the city grant the easement, have a hearing pursuant to state law, and grant an easement across the open space. My question really to council is, are we ready to bring this back now that they seem to be at that point where we have that agreement?
Refresh my memory on utility easements.
This easement would be for ingress, egress, and utilities.
But If the city needed to, or one of the franchised utilities needed to run utilities through there, through this easement, they could do so?
Yes.
Just like I too originally was willing to use the public input. One short, or you talking about one resident?
One vote.
One vote.
Yeah. And that I just found out what was possible. Yeah, possible.
What's going to be coming back to this ground easement?
There will be a hearing on the easement. It is an exemption from state law, from plat alteration, if we have a hearing to grant an easement over the open space. It's RCW 5817-225.
So you said we're being asked to have
Yes. We would,
it. And we would not know by
yes. And that would be my hope, is that we would,
Good.
yes. That's the vote that they're seeking. Two-thirds.
You could take action without that. You grant the easement separate from that, and they've got a driveway basically just going through. We'll bring it back forward.
Thank you,
Let's,
Ben.
Leanna, Mike, from your letter, you still have a buyer that's interested in this one? Can we bring it forward to the next, as early as the next?
And I would do notice to property owners the same as we did last time.
To walk on the setting of the hearing for this evening?
Even if we set the hearing for this evening, we would be looking at May 13th. Yeah, I'm just looking, I think that would, we're not taking action, and then there may be, we may want to have another work session with the parties involved, allowing the HOA to speak. We may hear public comments from the developer, Terry Glenn, as well. I would feel more, I'm not trying to slow it down. I think that if we set the hearing tonight for May 13th, if we had a work session before on that night as well, that there's still time available. Yeah, if we could talk about it.
If memory serves right, the only thing that we really sent everybody back with was to try and get that approval from the homeowners association. So if that information is still true from council, if we're at the point of getting that or being that close to it, so other conditions, other things that consumers and somebody want to put on it, sounds like it's ready to go. Gary can still speak during the public hearing, worst case, and with the homeowners association or anything else, but if we're doing our, we're doing it before the fact as well in advance, certainly helps with those things.
I was just going to say, maybe I missed something, but I thought the public hearing was the correct venue to hear from the homeowners association.
It is. I just would, if there was any other things that came out of that meeting that action items that you would want us to do in response to any comments that they would have. You could.
Yeah. So the short of it is, I'm fine with setting the public hearing tonight, as long as that doesn't generate problems with staff.
Type it up real quick for us. Any other questions for council?
5817, 225.
You guys gotta hate me, actually know what those are. Okay, thank you, Mitch. Anyone from the public that would like to comment to council before we break for the dinner session? Anyone at all? Yes, Larry.
As usual, I'll be brief. Larry Keister from Washougal, the Economic Development Council presentation tonight. I was heavily focused on Vancouver. Camas, Ridgefield, and Battleground were mentioned, but Steigerwald Industrial Park, Washougal, and the future Hamilton property were not. I certainly hope that in their discussions with future developments and businesses, they are aggressively promoting our area. But we're not Camas, we're Washougal. We do have Steigerwald that is a real gem for our behalf and in our favor. Other than the other thing is that Clark College and Washington State University, Vancouver should be encouraged to teach to the needs of our target market.
Thank you, Larry. Anyone else from the public that would like to comment? No. Okay, we are at 6:30. I'm going to suggest if there's no objection from council that we move anything under mayor's report and council comments to those periods during the regular meeting itself. Okay. Hearing no objection, we are adjourned for the moment due to come back here at 7 o'clock.